This week, we welcome Walter Wilkens, Head of Delivery, North America at DWF Legal Operations, to discuss how legal operations can help optimize your legal department. In the Leadership and Communications segment, the art of security. It is time to rethink the CISO's role. Really? We've been saying that for a while. The best leaders embrace the role of supporting character. Empathetic leadership can make or break AI adoption, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now. It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for emerging risks, leadership, and communication. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 447, recorded May 11th, 2026. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Yes, we are back to our normal format, finally, this week. Joining me remotely for this interview segment are my co-hosts today. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Thanks for the reboot.
Hey, no worries. You know, the technical gods were not looking out for me today. So, another thing that's not back to normal is sports. I'm relegated to golf and baseball and some playoff basketball at this point. I mean, woof.
Yes, woof. Can't wait for football season.
Exactly, buddy.
I've actually been watching XFL games just because I need to watch something.
Have you really? Oh, I haven't gotten there yet.
I've watched a few.
I'll be desperate enough to get there soon. I can guarantee it.
Okay. All right. Also joining this week, Mr. Ben Carr. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Matt. How's it going? Big weekend for us. We just got a new dog yesterday. So, yeah.
Congrats.
Thanks.
A lot of training to do. A lot of training coming.
It is. I stuck the kids with it. Luckily, they're old enough where I could put them on dog duty last night, and I got a really good night's sleep. So
you want to talk about empathetic leadership? I mean, come on, you got a dog now.
You got to teach early. That was the whole point.
All right, let's get into it. Walter Wilkens is head of delivery for North America, overseeing client engagements across DWF service lines, including litigation, contracts, regulatory compliance, technology implementation support, financial services, legal analytics, horizon scanning, and global tax development. Walter, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Well, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Hello. All right, so this is going to be a legal segment, so let's start with some definitions, because I'm not sure our audience understands what is legal operations. So let's start there and with the basics.
Sure. Legal operations at its core looks for a way to operationalize and execute the legal agenda of the GC department or the legal department of a corporation. And so what you're trying to do is create repeatable work streams that bring efficiencies overall and really increase bandwidth of the general counsel's legal department. So that's what it really is at its core, making workflows that have defined escalation points and bring overall efficiencies.
So why do we have to start thinking about our legal operations environment? One, do we even have them? But if we don't have them, like, why is this so important?
Because more and more what we find throughout legal departments across all global entities is really a crunch on bandwidth, right? Normally it's a reduction in staff, it's doing more with less. But yet, if you know, the remit they have never gets smaller. So they still have to deliver the same output with less resources. And so you have to find to do that, whether it's leveraging technology, which is a big thing that we use in legal operations, or it's finding a way to take your workflows and make them more efficient that'll increase your overall bandwidth.
Sounds a little bit like cybersecurity.
That sounds familiar. More with less, huh?
It's the same thing on every call.
I guess at the end of the day, you know, we talk a lot about it here that cybersecurity is a team sport and that you have to be working across the entirety of the business. You know, from a legal department perspective, number one, are you doing the same thing so that way you can get the economies of scale or you know, force multipliers across the business? And secondarily, how does cybersecurity teams help you, right? Help your organization kind of move forward?
And actually, that's a great question, because when we look at cybersecurity from a legal operations viewpoint, it's not just legal, it's not just IT, right? It's not just risk and compliance, but it sits across the entire enterprise. So when we talk to many of our clients, the issue is not a lack of expertise. It's often an issue of a lack of coordination or a lack of bandwidth. So now where does legal operations come in there? Well, legal operations really sits at that intersection. And what I mean by that is we work with legal departments, we work with tech departments, the technology group, the risk, and also the delivery overall. And so what we can do is help bring coordination that will then be able to roll these things out and make sure they follow through. Because what we find in a lot of organizations, for example, let's say that the IT writes beautiful policies, legal reviews them, clears them, they get put into place. Well, now, how are they being operationalized? How are they being executed? Who owns that? And it's a lot of that chafing right there sometimes where we see failures in overall cybersecurity because there's a lack of clarity to ownership. And the whole piece of legal operations is really process driven. And as I have said already, defined workflows. So what we want to try to do is to bring in ownership and to make sure that it's being maintained and carried through. And so that's really our role here. We don't provide legal advice. We're not giving any kind of IT security advice. What we're doing is make sure the process is in place so that the policies that the company has put in place are being executed and operationalized.
Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER.
So Walter, that's interesting, right? Because in many instances, those policies, procedures, standard operating procedures require care and feeding over time, right? They require update cycles, they require reviews, they require modernization. Does your team handle that as well? Where you're like, hey, cyber team, hey, legal team, it's time to review said policy and get it up to speed.
Oh, wow, you read my script. No, it's right in the wheelhouse. Exactly right. Because what we do is, and this happens with all, documentation is one of the most important parts of legal operations, right? Because we've discussed setting up a process, we discussed putting in a workflow, but that has to be documented. And then somebody has to make sure that's being maintained and that we're following that process. And so what we'll do is we'll set up SOPs, we'll get the documentation in place, and then we'll have version control on those. And so what we will have gotten is the input from the different stakeholders, such as the IT department or legal department, saying, when should this be updated? How often? Is this quarterly? Is this annually? Monthly in some instances for some of the things we do. And then what we'll do is make sure that those updates go out. The inputs are given from IT, the inputs are given from legal, risk, compliance, whoever has that. And then we'll get the next version out, circulate it, it'll be approved, and then that will go in as the one truth. And we continue to do that for all the standard SOPs that we've put together for an organization.
So when you think about a cyber incident, if I don't have legal operations, how does that impact the response, right? Like, to me, part of this process here is to help with that coordination in the event of a cyber incident. And a lot of organizations, I know we do, and I assume Jason and Ben do as well. We've got incident response plans in place, but there's handoffs to legal that maybe aren't as optimized or fine-tuned in that incident response plan. So how do these things start to come together, Walter?
One of the main things that we always talk about when there is an incident is security teams are concerned with the containment, right? That is their first focus of that. So somebody has to come in and make sure that the incident response playbook is being followed through on. And that's where you'll see legal operations step in. We'll make sure to track, in many of our situations, depending on different clients, make sure to track the regulatory requirements, make sure that the legal steps are being taken, communication plans are being executed, whatever privacy and cyber acquisition has to be done, we will make sure those things are happening. And so we'll work closely with both the IT team and the legal team to make sure we're moving forward on that. But there's also another big point in an incident. In incidents, often you're going to either have an insured incident or a non-insured incident. Why is that important? Because an insured incident, and this is something else that legal operations will help with because it'll be within the playbooks, you may have a requirement as far as notifying your insurer. Because notification insurance cyber incidents, it moves very quickly and the insurer steps in right away. Normally they'll acquire the breach counsel, they will look for the forensics team, and they will look to limit the impact of that overall incident. Now, if you have a non-insured incident, your response is completely different, right? Because at that point, you're operating either from what you have within your own playbooks, or you're right away turning to breach counsel, right? Which may be your internal GC, but then the outside firm that may be supporting him and saying, we've had this incident. What can you do for the breach? Or can you serve as breach counsel? If they can't, they normally have somebody they can hand you off to. Then there's that whole new acquisition where the insurance company already is fine-tuned. When we look at this, there's those two different instances. The insurance company has a plan, has everybody in place. They're going to be on the scene. They're going to get together. The non-insured, it's really getting that breach counsel, making sure to quarantine with your IT department, the containment piece we're talking about, and then looking at the steps you'll have to roll out afterwards.
Now, do you help organizations determine what is considered an insurance covered breach and a non-insurance covered breach? Because I don't know that many people know the difference.
We won't necessarily, your legal department will know, right, based on your policy, what is considered covered or uncovered. So that would be a legal decision. We wouldn't come with that, but we would have the process. Any cyber incidents, what's the steps that need to be taken for insurance, right? Who do we contact? Contact in the legal department. Where does it comes out? Notification. Where does it have to go out to? Who has to approve the notification? Once it's determined, is it a insured policy or a non-insured incident? What are the next steps that go after? We'll help with the process, but the actual legal determination of whether it's covered under our policy, the reading of the policy, that would happen by the legal department.
So Walter, I'm interested, we went right to incident and we went right to all these policies exist, right? But what I'm concerned with and what I'm really interested to find out, you get engaged with the company, and there's this thought process, I think, on legal that like cyber's handling it, and there's this thought process that cyber, that legal has all this information. And the friction between the two when an incident actually happens and nobody's tested it, and nobody's seen how it works, and nobody's found out that half of the processes don't exist, that's a big problem, especially in the midst of an incident. Where do you come in on that? To help people figure out, man, we're missing a bunch of stuff here. We're missing a bunch of process, documentation, workflow. You don't have somebody from external breach counsel assigned. How does that play?
Now, to some degree, you'll be bringing us in after the cow's out of the barn.
Okay.
Right? Because what we're going to do is we're going to execute the playbooks that we've worked together with you to put together. So you're going to have an incident playbook. You may have several different incident playbooks, and then we'll make sure those playbooks are being executed too. If you do not have those in place and the incidents occurred, then really you're moving into more of a damage control model, and there's nothing there for us to necessarily execute to assist you with. So
that's a pretty bad day, isn't it? If people aren't planning this ahead of time, that's where I find a lot of people get into trouble because they haven't thought through all this.
That's exactly right. And that's one of those things that we do with companies on the front end, that many companies are very lucky that somebody either in IT or legal said, you know what? We need to pressure test this. We need to see, do we have everything in place that we need? And while we're not going to come in and make any legal decisions for you or any security decisions, we can tell you, based on our experience, here's some of the protocols that you want to look at and review. Here's some of the contingencies that you want to have to consider that we've seen in other playbooks. And then you're going to review that. And your insurance company, a lot of times with a cyber breach policy, is going to make sure that you have a lot of those things in place, just because they're going to want to make sure that in the event of an incident, they're getting all the information and the containment that they need to require. So it's a pretty bad day if you don't have those in place. And it's one of those things that If it's an insured incident, you're much better off because, like I said, once again, they have a plan. They're going to come in, sort of like in Die Hard. The FBI is on the scene now. Everybody stand down. We're ready to take over. The insurance company will do that. It's really the uninsured incident that you're really going to have to rely on that time of having your counsel, either internal or external, that has either context to a good breach counsel or has had breach experience themselves.
So I'm assuming, Walter, companies attempt to bring you in before a breach in order to kind of prepare themselves. But do you also get pulled in post-breach when they don't have anything in place?
The biggest area that will be pulled in post-breach will really be in the data mining situation. And that's what we do for a lot of companies. So we'll do that for insurance companies and breach counsels. And we'll do it in insured situations and non-insured. And what that is that they've gone in. So either their breach counsel or their insurance company has worked with them to get the data that is subject to the breach, has been isolated, has been secured, and the forensics team's gone in. It will then be brought on. It'll be brought to us to go through and do an investigation through that data to see what potential personal identification information, PII, or personal health information, PHI, is there, so that they can start to prepare and we can put together a notification list, and then it can go through the notification process. That's typically when we'll be brought in post-incident.
Got it.
So whether it's normal operations, pre-breach, post-breach, the ability for different departments to communicate effectively is so important, right? Because even post-breach, if you find a lack of a policy or a process, if you have really good communication between legal and IT and cybersecurity, you can probably get through it, right? It'll be hard, but you can get through it. But how do we make sure? Because this is something that I've seen as a ton of friction. IT, security, HR, legal don't always speak the same language. And they spend so much time trying to figure out how to get on the same page that they're wasting time. Does an organization like yours kind of help translate between these departments who can't effectively communicate because they're speaking different languages?
Jason, I mean, it's funny that you say that because one of the things that when I'm talking with somebody and they're saying, well, how can you help us? I try to explain that we sort of act as a connective tissue between these different departments. Because what we will do is, let's look at the first instance. You have the policies in place, right? They gorgeous, beautiful, legal signed off on it. We're the first step of what we need to do, have our guidelines and protocols in. Well, what we'll help do in that situation, right, is try to create a RACI form for them if they don't have one in place already, right? That is really what you want to look at. Is who's responsible, right? RACI, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. And because what that suddenly does, that clearly sets out ownership lines. And so that tells people, okay, now you own that. I understand that in legal. You understand that in IT. Procurement understands that. And so that really helps us to put in cross-functional governance. I mean, that's really what you're discussing at the end of the day, right? Is putting in a governance model that spans across different departments. And as we were saying earlier, many failures stem from a lack of clarity as to who that is. It's not the technical gaps, right? We said the policies are well written. Legal's done its job. Everything looks good. It's really making sure that ownership, and that's where we bring in discipline to that ownership, setting up the RACI, making sure that we're continually going through it, making sure the processes align with the end goals of the company. So that will be in that first step.
Nice. You mentioned something that kind of hit a point with me that I had on my list of questions. You talked about procurement. So much risk comes from third-party vendors and supply chain. Are you helping in that area too? Kind of bridge that gap between supply chain risk, legal, security, and IT?
We do that for many, many clients in several ways. So you have the first instance, and what we call the first instance is really third-party cyber and risk management. And what that is making sure within an organization that your overall questionnaires and risk tiering is standardized. Right. So we talk with IT, we talk with procurement, we talk with legal, everybody gets their input because once again, we're the facilitator, we're not the decision maker. So we'll facilitate getting the inputs from all those stakeholders and saying, okay, based on what we've heard from you, here is what we see as a security questionnaire that you can use throughout the organization. The organization will make the decision to sign off on it and say, yep, let's go forward with that. The risk tiering makes sense. The RAG rating, red, amber, green makes sense. We can now roll that out because what that allows procurement to do then, as they're looking to bring on vendors and people, they can issue this standardized questionnaire and know that that's been signed off on everybody, and everybody will understand the organization, what it means. That's the second piece, right? Because a lot of times we can have these questionnaires, we can get answers. I see it as legal back in my GC days. Yeah, that's Jim's problem over in IT. That's not mine. Okay, and I read down to the 3 questions that I know are the legal. But when I know that I've helped put together that questionnaire, I've reviewed it, and I've signed off on it, it allows me to then also help take ownership of how it should roll out. The other thing it allows us to do, and what we do for many organizations, it allows us to track remediation. Because what you'll find when we talk of procurement and come back to legal and IT, we'll say, well, you have 30,000 agreements pre-2026. This policy went into place in 2026. You're going to need to go and remediate all of those in order to bring them up to code standard that you have for the organization. And suddenly you're like, oh, well, I'm not sending out a bunch of emails to everybody. And IT's like, wait, listen, we have to worry about the infrastructure and framework. We put this in place. That's not our situation either. And so what we'll do in those steps, we'll make the output work for both situations. So we'll do the outreach to those vendors, approved by IT and legal, saying, okay, here's the communications. It says, dear vendor, we have updated our terms and conditions as of 2026. Please see the updated terms and conditions. Please sign up that it'll become part of your contract. We'll do the outreach. We'll also track it to make sure we get everything in. We'll escalate as necessary. So, for example, Jason goes, I don't approve of IT number 4 there. We'll look in our playbook. It'll say, IT questions get escalated to Sally in IT. So it'll be sent out to Sally. And we'll track that it went to Sally. Say within the playbook, it says, Sally, you should get an answer with IT within 48 hours. 48 hours, if we don't have an answer, we'll reach back out to make sure we close the loop and get the answer back. Once we get the answer, we'll go back out to the vendor. And we'll do that also if it's a legal escalation. So what that allows is the legal department at the end of the day is going to get a dashboard from us that says, in which IT will also get, all the stakeholders will get, that says we've sent out, of the 10,000 contracts required remediation, we sent 10,000 notices. We received feedback from 7,000 of those. We received executed from 5,000. We'll have to reach out to 3,000, and they'll get full scale. And we'll make sure that's tracked to the end, because what that allows the company to do is know that they've put these in place, they've updated them, and they've remediated their contracts. And so this feeds into something else, Jason, your question was sort of hinting into. If you don't have those things in contracts, it loses value, right? Your security controls lose value, because if there is a breach, in many, I don't want to use the word most, it probably is most, many of the breaches will happen at the vendor level. And so if your vendor has a breach and you go, oh, well, you were bound by look, no, we never signed anything. Here's our contract from 1976 that's still in place with you. That doesn't apply to us. We don't have to live up to it. And so suddenly this great control you put in place, you can't really enforce or rely on against this particular vendor. And so that's what we do on that end to help make sure that you can take the value of the security controls.
So Walter, I assume some companies, large enough companies, will have their own kind of legal operations capability. Your services are probably meant more for mid and smaller size companies that really can't justify building out their own legal operations team. Is that roughly right or not?
No, actually, how we look at it, we look at a sphere or Venn diagram with 3 setups, right? You're going to have internal legal operations departments. You're going to have external, such as us, legal operation departments, and most will fall into the 3rd tier, which is a hybrid. You'll have an internal legal operation team, which will be supplemented by an external legal operation team.
Got it.
So many of our clients are very, very large global enterprises, but it may be in a particular area, their legal operations team doesn't have that expertise. So they may handle all the contract lifecycle management tools for them. They may handle all the onboarding and HR responsibilities that you'd put through legal operations, but maybe they don't have this cyber piece. And so they'll bring us in to help them on the cyber piece. Or maybe right now your legal department hasn't matured or decided to go the AI route. And so they want to know more about technologies. And so they'll look at technologies we've leveraged. And as technologies are being brought in by companies, we're actually working with a lot of them to validate their AI. What they want to say is, this is what the answer should be. This is what we're shooting for. What is it actually outputting? And we'll go through a validation process, tell them 95% you're on. And legal say, okay, our risk tolerance is 10%. So we're within the risk tolerance range. Or maybe it says, hey, it's 85%. It's was what we're getting as a return. It goes, well, our risk tolerance is 10%. We got to go and rework the models. And that's when they'll bring us in. So we work in tandem with these legal departments and legal operations. The other area, Matt, that we see it in is legal operations, even at the global level, are feeling the pinch and just aren't the size that they may have been. So when people tend to leave those organizations, we use the dreaded freeze, right? The position gets frozen. And so they still have the workload that person used to do, but no longer have it. And so what we do is we come in many situations and say, what does your department do best, either your legal department or your legal operations department? What areas can we take the lower hanging, what we consider fruit, and do that for you so on a day-to-day basis, you can level up to your highest priority, and we can make sure that the rank and file work gets done and off your plate.
I'm interested, you brought up AI, and I'm interested in what changes are you seeing in legal operations from AI, and what are the challenges, especially when it comes to the intermix of cyber, that you may be seeing around AI for legal operations?
AI is coming in probably faster this year than we've seen in previous years. And as I think everybody knows, it's almost like a snowball, which is gaining momentum. So where 2 years ago plus, people are having the conversation, people are saying that, oh, this is something we need to look into. Last year, maybe they're starting to take meetings on some of the tech they currently have. They have AI modules that can be added and things like that. This year, we're seeing a much greater push to try to implement, or as we're seeing with some companies, they demonstrate that their vendors, especially outside legal vendors, are using AI to create a greater efficiency for that company and to get a higher return on their spend. So we're definitely seeing that. It's really coming into play fast in the CLM market, right? The contracts, the redlining. And what we're seeing most organizations do, or even organizations like our own, is using what you call the HITL model, right? Human in the loop. So what you're doing is having the AI do work that you can validate. You're not giving open-ended, like, what's the best approach that we should take this year for our company? Well, okay, whatever it says, you got to hope it's correct. What you're saying is, what is the end date of that contract? AI goes through your 10,000 contracts, gives you the terms and conditions, and pulls out the execution date. Human in the loop goes on and validates it and says, yes, the information's correct in there. And that's what we're seeing for the biggest part in there. In the cyber world, AI can help us with that same validation piece, right? What we can see is what technologies can you leverage because of the massive amount of data to put it into a manageable review population that has a higher tendency that have hits in PII or PHI. And that's where you're seeing it being leveraged within technologies currently.
And I've seen cases where organizations are trying to figure out how third parties are using it and maybe limiting what they can and can't use, right? I see a lot on the other side of that, Walter, which is, hey, I want to know who's using AI. We might want to prohibit them from using it in our environments. We get a lot of security questionnaires where I work. One of the questions in there is, are you using artificial intelligence to tell you what you're using? Can it be turned off? So I'm seeing it on the other side too, where organizations are trying to limit their AI exposure through third-party relationships.
You're exactly right. And what we do a lot of times, we'll have a two-prong approach when we come to clients. We'll say we have this piece, which can be manual, right? It's a manual intervention. We manually attack what your goal is here, or we have technology-assisted technology leverage where we can have that. And it's really client-on-client basis to understand what is their risk aversion or what is their technology adoption policy. What guidelines do they have in place as an organization? And then a lot of the big ones will then also say, here's as you know, through security questionnaires, what are you using, what is the technology, how are you ensuring it, and we'll provide all that information through our ISOs and everything. Our IT department can provide all that to any potential client, but we're seeing that on both areas. So we give two approaches, whatever works best for your organization, what your current positioning or approach is to technology.
Got it. Walter, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
It was great being here. Thank you all so much for having me.
Zero trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default denied execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. All right, let's get into this week's articles. Who knew legal operations could be so riveting?
I know, right?
Right. It was a good segment, though.
Yeah, it was.
All right, so we haven't done this in a while, so I had plenty to choose from. So many good articles because it's been like 2 months, right?
I know.
So some of these are paired together, and they're paired together on purpose. So first one, CISO shortage may reflect unrealistic job expectations. Anybody?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this quite a few times. I mean, along with legal pressures and personal legal pressures and expectations that you're going to be a superhero coming in and take everything over. I mean, yeah, I think there's a ton of pressure on the CISO role at this point, right? And it's everything from the personal liability that people are struggling with, and the expectations of the organization wanting a unicorn to come in and save the day, but also be the scapegoat when the stuff hits the fan. It's why we've seen these articles about people moving over to a different role completely, or maybe becoming a vCISO, right, where they're a consultant. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this is it's a thing, right? The CISO burnout when you're an FTE is a real thing.
Yeah. It's just interesting. The gap may reflect unrealistic job expectations rather than a true talent shortage, which ties into article number 2, because we've been talking about this for a while, right?
Yep.
It's a skills gap. It's a skills gap.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it concerns me when they say talent gap, right? We heard that for years, where it's talent gap. No, there's so many good people with the right attitude and aptitude out there. It's whether or not you want to commit to helping them sharpen their skills to get up to where they need to be. I see it every day. Folks out there who have been pigeonholed in their role, not allowed to get educated and innovate because they're considered a workhorse, and they just, they work employees to the bone, and they're not giving them good professional development paths.
Right.
I see it
Remember,
all the time.
Employees don't want to be retained. They want to be developed.
That's it. 100%. 100%. But part of that is making sure they have professional development so they can continuously sharpen their skills. And that's not happening, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately not. The art of security is it time to rethink the CISO's role. We've talked a lot about this as well. This article got a little interesting in talking about the different leadership and kind of their role, because this uses a Sun Tzu reference here as part of this, right? And it lays out the different roles, right? The CEO being the general leading the charge, the CFO being the quartermaster, the CIO being the tactician, the CISO, the battlefield strategist. What do you think about yourself being a battlefield strategist?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, that's not all I would want to be, right? I think part of the role of being a battlefield
that's a tactical
strategist,
expectation.
It is. I mean,
right.
Here's the thing, though. When we talked about it before, when the stuff hits the fan, you kind of need to be that general in charge, helping guide the organization where they're going. That's a battlefield strategist, right? You're a general who knows what battle looks like. Yeah, but that's not your whole role.
Jason, look, if I was going to send you off, right, to a combat zone, would you want to have like some input to the strategy ahead of time to try to hopefully not get to that point?
Well, but that's
or
what I mean,
you're going to get to that point before deployed with the best resources possible.
No, but here's the thing, Ben. Here's the thing, Ben. In a war college, a battlefield strategist sits there in a war college and strategizes. That's the key. They're not executing on the battlefield. They're prepping for the battlefield so that way they can properly execute.
Agreed, but that's how this is used. That's been the implementation of how the CISO has been brought to bear, right?
Oh,
Like
sure.
that's not sitting at the table, right? Like how do we appropriately plan for what we're going to
Yeah.
need to plan for if we're not a party to what's actually going
Yeah.
on?
So we need to be a battlefield general. We're acting as a battlefield sergeant, right? Unfortunately, in real life, but no, we should be the general helping build the strategies. 100%.
Yeah, and it talks about integrated command, which is a theme that came out of the first segment too, a little bit, right? That lack of coordination, right? It's here again in this article in how the CISO has to coordinate with the other executives across the team. You brought it up just not even half an hour ago, Jason, in the previous discussion, right? And that's another component here. If the CISO is sitting under the CIO, how is it supposed to be able to have an integrated command with the CEO, CFO, and the CIO?
It doesn't. There's a filter, right? And that's part of the problem. You're not acting as a C-level or a general in the context of this conversation, right? You're absolutely not. And you're acting as someone kind of below the strategist who gets a filter going upstream. And that's the challenge of a CISO not reporting directly to a CEO. There's going to be a filter.
Yeah, this is the skills gap, top CISO concern. Security leaders face gaps, not in their org charts, but in their team skills. That was the one I was referring to earlier.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously AI skill set's one of the big ones listed in here. Of course, it is such a new emerging space. Of course it is. I was trying to remember cloud, and there was a couple other ones in here that were really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the skills gap at the end of the day, like you said, is a training or a development gap. That's what it is. If you can hire for the right attitude and aptitude and train the rest, develop the rest.
Yeah, one of the things I'm seeing on the AI skills gap, right, is that we're looking out there and saying we need more people with AI skills, or we want our own staff to level up, right? But it's just like when it comes to trainings, right? This was a SANS survey, right? So I'm sure they're trying to advocate for more training. But one of the things is always like, I need to go to this certification or this school or this training, right? But I think this is certainly true for AI. Like, we need to actually provide resources, right? We need to provide capabilities. We need to let people have, tokens to actually go do AI testing and training on their own. Like, you can't expect somebody to come up with the technologies that this transformative and is moving this quickly and not give them the opportunity to actually level up. If you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Agreed.
Yeah. And that's kind of the next article, right? Like, how do CISOs step up to that security workforce challenge? And it talks about starting to use some of these tools. And I think it comes up in another article too, which is to build the skill sets, start leveraging some of the tools, right? So some of the things that have happened in the last couple months, right? We walk out of RSA Security Conference, we start doing these the interviews, and we haven't talked about this. But then post RSA Conference, Mythos and the frontier models come out, and kind of blindsides the industry like very quickly, like finding vulnerabilities that no vulnerability scanner has found. Like, this has been going on for over a month now, right? And we haven't had a chance to talk about it on the show. Part of solving for that skill gap is starting to leverage some of these tools in our day-to-day operations to help us not only learn the technology, shorten those gaps, but also leverage this capability to get to better outcomes. Because these frontier models, they're scary, right? They're scary in the fact that they are going to accelerate a lot of things in our industry. Not only identifying vulnerabilities, but then creating exploits and doing all this stuff before we even get a chance to respond, right? So why not use this as an opportunity to get our employees to start using some of this capability and build up some of those skills that we need, but then also use it to help us defend against this stuff.
Yeah, but you have to do it in a safe space. Like, we've seen articles come out. There's been reports where like people have tried to apply AI to use cases and it's gone badly, right? Like, we know it's going to, but it deleted the entire production database, right?
Right.
Because it was unexpected. Right. Like, you've got to you've got to set yourself up for success and give resources and opportunity to people to say, look, here's a certain amount of credits, a certain amount of tokens you can spend on a month in your own research, in your own lab, like set up an off production lab, set up stuff if you have to do in a company environment, but set up stuff that's not in production, right? That's just for people to experiment so they actually understand how to use the tools effectively and within guardrails inside the production environment.
Here's the challenge that I hear a lot though, right? Think about it. We live in an instant gratification society. Organizations want that now. And it takes time to develop. It takes investment to develop. And so many executive teams are like, we don't have the time, we don't have the money, right? To be able to invest in a non-production environment, right? A test environment, to be able to train people up and spend all that money. Think about what gets cut in budgets first. Training budgets get cut first. That's like the top of the, that's the top line that gets cut all the time. Right. So this is the challenging piece of this, is that we want to develop our staff. We as CISOs, we want to invest in training, but the organization, the company is saying we don't have the time and we don't have the money.
Yeah, it's very short-sighted.
Right.
Yeah. Very short-sighted. All right, we're going to get some leadership articles and a couple of these hit home for me. So the first one from HBR, the best leaders embrace the role of supporting character. And this one talks about the founder mode and how the main character energy, that self-centered media trend applied to leadership kind of creates some struggles in an organization. I lived through one of these not that long ago, by the way, where when you have that kind of mentality as a leader, it sucks all the oxygen out of the room.
Sure.
Like it just does. And the organization struggles big time. This article is talking about, no. You should be in a supporting character role. That allows everybody around you to participate and be engaged and drives the success together instead of that kind of founder mode down. And I see other companies that struggle with this, by the way, but I've actually lived it. Yeah.
No, big time. I mean, there's that old cliche of the scariest person in the room is the one who's sitting there quiet, because they are the leader, they are the enabler, and they've enabled their teams to be effective and communicate in meetings and command meetings and drive meetings. And, I've always said it, you folks who've worked with me for a while will leave a meeting and they'll look at me and they'll be like, you had the moment, didn't you? And I'll be like, I did. You know what that's called? You know what they call it? The proud papa moment. People on my team call it the proud papa moment, because I'm sitting there watching, listening. I'll engage if I need to engage, but if I don't need to engage, I allow the conversations to happen. I allow the innovation to happen. I allow the change agents to do their thing, right? And we leave the meeting and I have my proud papa moments. That's my job. My mantra's always been, my job is to teach you how to put me out of a job. That's a strong leader right there.
Yep. That's a supporting character role.
You leave the ego at the door.
Yeah.
All about making people better. When you're in an executive role, it's all about making everyone around you better, helping them get better, helping develop them.
Absolutely. Ben, did you have a comment there? It sounded like
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I think I like the, taking the oxygen out of the room, because I think, look, I think we've all been in moments, you mentioned you had one, we've all been in moments where you sit there and you're like, yeah, I don't feel like I can breathe here. Like, I don't feel like I'm, I've got something to say, and, what's there to be said is probably more important or more insightful than what's actually being said. But that's a frustration, right? And if you're doing that to your people, you're not exposing the best that your people can be, and you're not enabling their growth. It's important. It's important to give people the space to operate, and have the ability after that meeting, not in the meeting, but after that, if it's not going great, to course correct them a little bit and help them. But that's how you grow good teams, right? That's how you grow people.
Yeah. And that's how, as a really good leader, it's time to move aside and bring in somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Again, if you're in founder mode, I get it. But at a certain point, sometimes it's better to move into a supporting character role, bring in somebody else that can take the business to the next level. Mm-hmm. And I have seen so many leaders and companies not do that and really stifle growth.
100%.
Like they max out. There's nowhere else for them to go.
When you say something, when it's time, like, and when it's the right time to actually pipe up and say something or add value, it's a lot more powerful at that
Yes.
point because you're not talking the entire time, right? So people, I mean, I've seen this happen. Like people will actually stop and everyone will pivot, right? Because the guy who's sitting at the end of the room who hasn't been saying anything actually says something. And it doesn't even have to be the leader. Sometimes it's a guy down level and people say, wow, this, that's really important. I respect this guy a lot. I want to hear what he has to say because when he talks, it's not often. And when he does say something, it's very insightful and important.
Yeah, I've seen a lot go through this, unfortunately. These last couple articles are around leadership and AI, which is a skill set we need to really start thinking about as leaders. The new leadership skill nobody is developing. Knowing how to use AI is a tool skill. Knowing how to design environments where using AI makes your people better is a leadership skill. Almost nobody is building it.
No, and to be honest with you, a culture that accepts AI, a culture that
Exactly.
enables their people to know that it's a tool available and how to use it, right? I literally just had a debate like this over the weekend where, we were out for Mother's Day and there were family members around and, a professional who's in my family was like, you know what? Basically taking the stance of AI is the enemy. AI is the enemy. It's making people lazy and went down that diatribe. I said, listen, the train has left the station. What we need to be doing as organizations now is educating and empowering our employees on how to use it effectively.
Yeah.
How to make themselves better with it, right? And it was that debate I just had over the weekend. And you still have folks who kind of have that antiquated mindset. And I equated it to the days of the internet and when Google came around and educators were saying Googling things is cheating, right? It was that same, now they embrace it. All right, go use Google, go do research, go do this. I'm like, it's that same trajectory. Yes, it gets information in front of you faster. Yes, you have to go out there and validate information. You have to go do the work. Otherwise, you're not going to get value from it, but we need to be educating people how to use it.
Yeah, but with that comes balance, right? There's
Sure.
a right way and a wrong way to do
course,
that. And
yeah.
I mean, I think people assume because of the amount of information and the speed that it's the velocity, right? That's, you guys know, that's been a word I've thrown on a lot is velocity. The velocity of information people are getting, the assumption becomes that the AI is really smart.
That's right.
It's not really smart. It has an access to a lot of information,
Yep,
right?
right.
And what people have to focus on, I think, especially at the leadership side, is when you look at doing something with an AI bent, that's awesome. But what you can't eliminate is the uniqueness of what the human brings to it and their ability to generate new data and new information, right?
Right.
To take in that concept and say, oh, there's a whole new way to engineer the process. What AI is going to give you, LLM specifically, is the same process is rehashed, right? If you're not doing a process and it has been optimized well, they'll help you optimize it, but they won't come up with a new process necessarily, right? To do something in an entirely new way. And that's where human innovation is really insightful. And so leverage AI where it makes sense and leverage humans where they make sense. And if you bring that together, that's a force multiplier.
But it's our job as the executive team to start building out enablement for the employees, right?
Yeah.
Because in the absence of it, they're just going to go out and use it and take it at face value.
Yeah.
The other thing that this leads me to a little bit is it's not only leadership skills, but our assumptions around architectures are also changing very rapidly. I've been hypothesizing like the last 30 years of what we've done and how AI is going to flip a whole bunch of stuff on its head. Like just completely flip stuff on its head. And how do we learn from previous mistakes over the past 30 years? I've been in this space on how should we be thinking about architectures moving forward. I truly believe we're moving to a world where agents are going to do a lot of work for us, but the way those agents communicate and how they gain access to data are going to change the way we've done everything for 30 years, right? And it's going to be very disruptive, I think, to a big portion of the industry that is not prepared for the impact that AI and these agents are going to have in our environments. And so I've been kind of thinking through, like, how should we reapproach technology and technology architectures to embrace where the world's going to go, which is leveraging these agents to do a lot of work for us. And if we do that right, it's going to unleash innovation we haven't even thought about, and how AI is going to really drive that innovation if put into the employees' hands in a way that allow them to innovate off of that.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many different ways that AI is going to enhance the organization, right? There's going to be AI as your co-pilot in something that you can go out there and do research with. There's going to be AI assisted work where it's you and the AI working together. But then there's going to be the agents out there doing the work. And then you have to have that human in the loop piece where they go out and they do a whole bunch of exercises over the course of the next 12 hours that you're sleeping. And then you come in and you have to do some validation or fine tuning or training or whatever the case may be. There's going to be different ways that the AI engages in our daily work. We have to be ready for that.
Which ties into this last article. Empathetic leadership can make or break your AI adoption.
Yeah.
New term, FOBO, fear of becoming obsolete.
Yeah. I mean, we have to be there as a leadership team to make sure that our employees aren't sitting there saying the robots are coming to get us and we're going to be fired here in 6 months.
Right.
Because that is a genuine fear.
It is.
It's reality. I have heard so many organizations and their employees say this. Literally say this, that our employees are afraid that they're going to lose their job the second we start automating. And we have to be out there combating that.
Okay. Like, yeah, I get it. But at the same time, like, we have to help prep those people for the reality of change, because
but that's part of it.
There are a lot of people
Right.
that are going to be displaced or are already being displaced by the change.
But
that's
shame
happening,
on
right?
us if we don't give them the pathway to succeed or fail. And that's what leaders aren't doing. They're not setting the expectation saying, here's how you're going to succeed in this organization, and here's the pathway to get there. What they're letting employees do is fall on their face, and then they're getting riffed. That's unacceptable. They're not even giving
Clear
the opportunity
guidelines
to
and
level
all.
up. They're
And again-
literally cutting them out at their knees.
Exactly. And this ties back into that last article a little bit, right? Like, if we can teach our employees how to leverage this capability to increase their skill set and drive more innovation and change down the road, that's a good thing, right? Not everybody's going to make that
That's
pivot
right,
and transition,
100%.
right? But we have to create an environment, a culture that allows us to do that. And if we're not using our empathy and empathetic leadership capabilities to drive this,
Right.
so what are you going to do? People will stop using AI adoption. Okay, well, great. But then what does that do? Well, that just probably puts you on a faster track to having your jobs eliminated because you're not adopting the technology. But if you do it in the right way and you create a culture that allows them to adopt it and also use it to excel, now you've created a whole new class of
And grow
employees.
the business. Hey,
Right.
guess what? When those employees are off doing bigger, better, more strategic things, whoa, could you grow your business? Absolutely, you could. 100% you can grow your business by doing that.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you take that? Use a scalpel, not a hatchet.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting world over the next couple years as this technology continues to be embraced and leveraged. And we're going to see who makes the cultural shifts to really use it to its full potential and who's not.
No, agreed. But yeah, that's the thing. It's instant gratification society. We need to save money. The biggest line item in our budget is people. Slash the people. That's the mindset I'm seeing.
Yeah,
It is,
it's
yeah.
true.
Yep.
But I don't know that strategy wins out on the long
I don't
run.
think so.
Yeah, time will tell. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.